Question 1. The risk matrix shows a potential for a landlord in Dubai to pressure a real estate salesperson to expedite a lease agreement by suggesting the omission of certain standard clauses that the tenant might find unfavorable, arguing that they are just formalities. The salesperson is aware that these clauses are important for protecting the tenant's rights and ensuring compliance with Dubai RERA regulations. What is the most ethically sound and legally compliant course of action for the real estate salesperson in this situation? Option A. Inform the landlord that the clauses can be omitted, but advise the tenant to seek independent legal advice regarding their implications, thereby shifting the responsibility for disclosure. Option B. Proceed with the lease agreement as requested by the landlord, focusing on securing the commission, and address any tenant concerns about the omitted clauses only if they arise after signing. Option C. Clearly explain to both the landlord and the tenant the importance of all standard RERA-mandated lease clauses, ensuring both parties understand their implications, and refuse to proceed with the agreement if any legally required clauses are to be omitted or misrepresented. Option D. Agree to the landlord's request to omit the clauses deemed formalities to secure the lease agreement quickly, assuming the landlord is acting in good faith and the tenant will not be significantly disadvantaged. Correct answer is C. Clearly explain to both the landlord and the tenant the importance of all standard RERA-mandated lease clauses, ensuring both parties understand their implications, and refuse to proceed with the agreement if any legally required clauses are to be omitted or misrepresented. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the client's immediate desire for a quick lease agreement with the salesperson's ethical and legal obligation to ensure full disclosure and adherence to the UAE's Real Estate Regulatory Agency RERA guidelines. The salesperson must navigate potential conflicts of interest and avoid misrepresentation, which could lead to severe penalties for both the salesperson and the brokerage. The best professional approach involves prioritizing transparency and compliance. This means clearly explaining the implications of the different lease terms, including the standard RERA-mandated clauses and any permissible additional clauses, to both the landlord and the tenant. The salesperson should ensure both parties fully understand their rights and obligations before signing, and that the lease agreement accurately reflects their mutual understanding. This aligns with RERA mandate to protect the rights of all parties involved in real estate transactions and to promote fair and transparent dealings. An approach that involves downplaying the significance of certain clauses to expedite the signing is professionally unacceptable. This constitutes misrepresentation and a failure to uphold the duty of care owed to the client, potentially violating RERA regulations concerning disclosure and professional conduct. Similarly, agreeing to the landlord's request to omit or alter standard RERA clauses without proper legal consultation or ensuring the tenant's informed consent is a serious ethical and regulatory breach. This could lead to an unenforceable or disadvantageous lease agreement for one or both parties, undermining the integrity of the transaction and RERA oversight. Finally, pressuring the tenant to sign without adequate time for review or understanding of the terms, even if the landlord is pushing for it, is unethical and violates principles of fair dealing and informed consent, which are implicitly required by RERA regulatory framework. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding the client's needs while strictly adhering to all applicable laws and ethical standards. This involves active listening, thorough explanation of all terms and conditions, ensuring informed consent, and documenting all communications and agreements. When faced with pressure to deviate from standard practices or legal requirements, professionals must stand firm in their commitment to ethical conduct and regulatory compliance, seeking guidance from their brokerage or legal counsel if necessary. Question 2. Stakeholder feedback indicates a growing concern among new real estate salespersons in the Emirate of Dubai regarding the enforceability of initial offer letters versus formal sale and purchase agreements. A potential buyer has submitted a signed offer letter for a property, clearly stating the price and their intent to purchase. The buyer is eager to proceed immediately, believing this letter constitutes a binding contract. As a real estate salesperson in Dubai, how should you advise the buyer to ensure the transaction is legally sound and enforceable? Option A. Urge the buyer to sign the offer letter quickly to secure the property, assuring them that any necessary legal details can be sorted out later. Option B. Explain that while the offer letter signifies intent, a legally binding sale and purchase agreement (SPA) requires specific elements like detailed payment terms and property particulars to be enforceable under Dubai law, and guide them through drafting a formal SPA. Option C. Inform the buyer that a separate SPA is not necessary and the offer letter will suffice for legal purposes in Dubai. Option D. Advise the buyer that the signed offer letter is sufficient as a binding contract and proceed with the transaction based on its terms. The correct answer is B. Explain that while the offer letter signifies intent, a legally binding sale and purchase agreement, SPA, requires specific elements like detailed payment terms and property particulars to be enforceable under Dubai law, and guide them through drafting a formal SPA. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential conflict between a client's immediate desire and the legal requirements for a valid real estate contract in the Emirate of Dubai. A real estate salesperson must navigate the client's urgency while ensuring all legally mandated elements are present and understood to prevent future disputes and uphold professional integrity. The salesperson's role is to facilitate a legally sound transaction, not merely to expedite a deal at the expense of enforceability. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves clearly explaining to the client that while the initial offer is a crucial step, a legally binding sale and purchase agreement, SPA, requires specific elements to be enforceable under Dubai's real estate laws. This includes a clear description of the property, the agreed purchase price, payment terms, the identities of the buyer and seller, and signatures. The salesperson should then guide the client through the process of drafting and executing a formal SPA that incorporates these essential elements, ensuring both parties understand their obligations and rights. This approach upholds the principles of transparency, due diligence, and adherence to the Dubai Land Department (DLD) regulations governing real estate transactions, thereby protecting both parties and ensuring the contract's enforceability. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to proceed with the transaction based solely on the initial offer letter, assuming it constitutes a binding agreement. This fails to recognize that while an offer is a precursor, it typically lacks the detailed terms and conditions necessary for a legally enforceable SPA in Dubai. Relying on an incomplete document can lead to disputes over payment schedules, property handover, or other critical aspects, rendering the agreement unenforceable or subject to costly litigation. Another incorrect approach is to pressure the client into signing the initial offer letter without fully explaining the need for a formal SPA. This prioritizes closing the deal over ensuring legal compliance and client understanding. It violates ethical obligations to act in the client's best interest and can lead to a contract that is not legally sound, potentially exposing the salesperson and their agency to liability. A further incorrect approach is to advise the client that the offer letter is sufficient and that a separate SPA is unnecessary. This demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of real estate contract law in Dubai. The DLD mandates specific documentation and procedures for property transactions, and an offer letter alone does not satisfy these requirements for a fully enforceable sale. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that prioritizes legal compliance and client welfare. This involves 1. Identifying the core legal requirements for a real estate contract in the relevant jurisdiction Dubai. 2. Assessing the client's request against these requirements. 3. Clearly communicating the legal necessities to the client, explaining the purpose and importance of each element. 4. Guiding the client through the correct procedural steps to ensure a legally sound and enforceable agreement. 5. Maintaining transparency and honesty throughout the process. Question 3. Governance review demonstrates that a real estate salesperson in Dubai is assisting a buyer with the purchase of a property. The salesperson has a pre-existing referral agreement with a specific mortgage provider that entitles the salesperson to a commission for each successful mortgage application referred. The buyer has inquired about financing options. What is the most ethical and compliant approach for the salesperson to take in this situation, considering the regulatory framework of the UAE real estate sector? Option A. Recommend the specific mortgage provider to the buyer, highlighting its benefits, and do not disclose the personal commission received from the referral. Option B. Disclose the referral agreement and commission structure to the buyer, recommend the mortgage provider, while also advising the buyer to explore other financing options and seek independent financial advice. Option C. Avoid discussing any financing options with the buyer to prevent any perceived conflict of interest, leaving the buyer to find financing independently. Option D. Inform the buyer that they must use the salesperson's preferred mortgage provider to ensure a smooth transaction and potentially better terms. The correct answer is B. Disclose the referral agreement and commission structure to the buyer. Recommend the mortgage provider while also advising the buyer to explore other financing options and seek independent financial advice. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it involves a potential conflict of interest and the need to uphold ethical standards in real estate transactions within the UAE. A real estate salesperson must navigate the complexities of financing options while ensuring transparency and acting in the best interest of their client, adhering to the principles of fairness and integrity as mandated by UAE real estate regulations. The salesperson's dual role as a representative of the seller and an advisor on financing options requires careful judgment to avoid misleading the buyer or engaging in practices that could be construed as unethical or non-compliant with the Dubai Land Department (DLD) guidelines. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves clearly disclosing the salesperson's relationship with the financing institution and providing the buyer with unbiased information about various financing options available in the UAE market. This approach prioritizes transparency and the client's right to informed decision-making by recommending a reputable financing institution while also advising the buyer to explore other options and seek independent financial advice. The salesperson upholds their fiduciary duty and adheres to the ethical principles of the UAE real estate profession, which emphasize honesty and client welfare. This aligns with the DLD's commitment to fair and transparent real estate dealings. Incorrect approaches analysis. Recommending a specific financing institution without disclosing the personal benefit or commission received creates a conflict of interest and is ethically unsound. This practice can mislead the buyer into believing the recommendation is solely based on the buyer's best interests, when it is influenced by personal gain, violating the trust expected of a real estate professional and potentially contravening DLD regulations on disclosure and fair practice. Suggesting that the buyer is obligated to use a particular financing institution, even if it offers a slightly better rate, is coercive and unethical. It limits the buyer's choices and may not be in their overall financial best interest, disregarding the principles of client autonomy and fair competition in the UAE financial market. Failing to mention any financing options and leaving the buyer entirely to their own devices, especially when the salesperson has knowledge of available options and potential benefits, can be seen as a dereliction of duty. While not directly unethical, it falls short of providing comprehensive service and guidance that a professional salesperson is expected to offer, potentially hindering the buyer's ability to secure suitable financing within the UAE context. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes transparency, client welfare, and regulatory compliance. This involves identifying potential conflicts of interest, disclosing all relevant information, providing unbiased advice, and empowering clients to make informed decisions. In situations involving financing, it is crucial to understand the regulatory landscape of the UAE, including DLD guidelines, and to always act with integrity and in the best interest of the client. Question 4. Governance review demonstrates that a real estate salesperson in Dubai is marketing a property that features multiple individual office spaces, shared reception areas, and is intended for various businesses to lease and operate from. The salesperson is unsure whether to present this property as residential, commercial, industrial, or agricultural to a potential investor. Based on the property's description and intended use, what is the most accurate classification and why? Option A. Agricultural real estate, as it is a property that can be divided and leased. Option B. Industrial real estate, as it involves multiple units that could be used for small-scale production. Option C. Residential real estate, as it provides spaces that could potentially be used for home offices. Option D. Commercial real estate, as it is designed for business operations and leasing to multiple commercial tenants. Correct answer is D. Commercial real estate, as it is designed for business operations and leasing to multiple commercial tenants. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a real estate salesperson in Dubai to accurately classify a property for a client, ensuring compliance with Dubai's Land Department DLD regulations, and ethical selling practices. Misclassification can lead to contractual disputes, financial penalties for the client and salesperson, and damage to the salesperson's reputation and the brokerage standing. The salesperson must demonstrate a thorough understanding of the distinct characteristics and intended uses of different property types as defined by Dubai's real estate framework. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves clearly identifying the property's primary intended use and its physical characteristics to determine its classification under Dubai's real estate categories. This means recognizing that a property designed for multiple businesses to operate from, with individual units for rent and common areas, fits the definition of commercial real estate. This aligns with the Dubai Land Department's classifications, which distinguish between residential for dwelling, commercial for business operations, industrial for manufacturing or storage, and agricultural for farming. By accurately categorizing the property as commercial, the salesperson ensures they are providing correct information to the client, facilitating appropriate marketing, and adhering to the legal and regulatory requirements for transactions involving commercial properties in Dubai. Incorrect approaches analysis. Classifying the property as residential would be incorrect because it is not intended for people to live in. Its failure to recognize the property's business-oriented purpose violates the fundamental definitions of property types and misleads the client about its suitability and the associated transaction regulations. Classifying the property as industrial would be incorrect as it is not designed for manufacturing, processing, or large-scale storage. This misclassification ignores the property's layout and intended use for multiple business tenants, potentially leading to marketing the property for an unsuitable purpose and violating DLD guidelines. Classifying the property as agricultural would be incorrect as it has no relation to farming or land cultivation. This demonstrates a severe lack of understanding of basic property types in Dubai's real estate market, failing to provide any relevant or accurate information to the client. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic approach. First, thoroughly understand the client's needs and the property's physical attributes and intended use. Second, consult official Dubai Land Department (DLD) guidelines and classifications for real estate types. Third, match the property's characteristics and intended use to the most appropriate DLD category. If there is any ambiguity, seek clarification from the brokerage compliance officer or the DLD directly. Transparency and accuracy are paramount in all client interactions. Question 5. Governance review demonstrates that a real estate salesperson in Dubai is assisting a buyer who is seeking a mortgage for a property purchase. The buyer, having some prior exposure to real estate markets in other countries, inquires about obtaining private mortgage insurance to potentially reduce their down payment. How should the salesperson ethically and accurately respond to this inquiry within the context of Dubai's real estate and financial regulations? Option A. Advise the buyer that while private mortgage insurance isn't directly available, they can explore other complex financial instruments that serve a similar purpose, without detailing what these instruments are. Option B. Explain that private mortgage insurance is not a standard product in Dubai, but discuss the loan-to-value (LTV) ratios set by the UAE Central Bank and how they influence down payment requirements, advising the buyer to focus on their financial profile for loan approval. Option C. Inform the buyer that they can seek out a specialized insurance provider in Dubai to obtain private mortgage insurance, which will allow them to secure a higher loan amount. Option D. Describe private mortgage insurance as a common practice in Dubai that lenders offer to reduce their risk, and suggest the buyer inquire directly with their bank about this insurance option. The correct answer is B. Explain that private mortgage insurance is not a standard product in Dubai, but discuss the loan-to-value (LTV) ratios set by the UAE Central Bank and how they influence down payment requirements, advising the buyer to focus on their financial profile for loan approval. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a real estate salesperson in Dubai to navigate the complexities of financing options for a buyer, specifically concerning the implications of private mortgage insurance, PMI, in the context of UAE real estate law and common lending practices. The salesperson must understand that PMI, as commonly understood in other jurisdictions, is not a standard product offered by UAE lenders. Misrepresenting or misunderstanding the available financing mechanisms can lead to significant client dissatisfaction, potential legal repercussions, and damage to the salesperson's professional reputation. The core challenge lies in accurately advising the client on available financing structures without introducing concepts that do not align with the UAE's regulatory and financial landscape. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves clearly explaining to the buyer that private mortgage insurance, PMI, is not a standard feature of mortgage products offered by banks in Dubai. Instead, the salesperson should focus on the actual financing structures available, such as the loan-to-value, LTV, ratios mandated by the UAE Central Bank, which dictate the maximum percentage of a property's value that can be financed. The salesperson should explain that higher LTV ratios may require a larger down payment from the buyer, and that lenders assess risk based on the buyer's financial profile and the property itself, rather than through a separate insurance product like PMI. This approach is correct because it aligns with the regulatory framework and common lending practices in Dubai, ensuring the client receives accurate and actionable information. It avoids introducing foreign concepts that could cause confusion or lead to unrealistic expectations. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to explain PMI as if it were a readily available product in Dubai, detailing its supposed benefits in reducing the buyer's upfront costs or mitigating lender risk. This is incorrect because it misrepresents the UAE's financial market and regulatory environment. There is no direct equivalent to the US-style PMI product, and such a description would be factually inaccurate and potentially misleading, violating ethical obligations to provide truthful information. Another incorrect approach is to suggest that the buyer can obtain a special insurance from a third party to cover the difference between the loan amount and the down payment, without clarifying that this is not a standard or regulated product in Dubai. This is incorrect as it creates a false impression of available solutions and could lead the buyer to seek non-existent services or make financial decisions based on misinformation. It fails to adhere to the principle of providing accurate and verifiable information about financial products. A further incorrect approach is to simply state that the bank will decide the loan amount without further explanation, implying that the buyer has no recourse or understanding of the factors influencing loan approval. While the bank does make the final decision, a professional salesperson should be able to explain the general principles of mortgage lending in Dubai, including LTV ratios and the importance of the buyer's financial standing, as dictated by UAE Central Bank regulations. Omitting this information is a failure to adequately inform and guide the client. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a framework of transparency and accuracy when discussing financing options. This involves 1. Understanding the local regulatory environment. Familiarize oneself with the specific regulations governing mortgages and lending in Dubai, including those set by the UAE Central Bank. 2. Client-centric communication. Prioritize clear, honest, and accurate communication with the client. Avoid jargon or concepts that are not applicable to the local market. 3. Focus on available solutions. Instead of discussing hypothetical or non-existent products, focus on the actual financing mechanisms and requirements prevalent in Dubai. 4. Proactive education. Educate clients on the relevant aspects of the local real estate and finance market, empowering them to make informed decisions. 5. Ethical conduct. Uphold the highest ethical standards by providing truthful and complete information, ensuring client trust and professional integrity. Question 6. Market research demonstrates a growing interest among first-time homebuyers in the UAE for government-backed financing options to purchase properties. A potential buyer, who is a UAE national and has expressed concerns about their initial down payment, is inquiring about the possibility of securing a loan through programs similar to the FHA, VA, or USDA loans available in other countries. As a licensed real estate salesperson operating in Dubai, how should you best advise this client regarding their financing options? Option A. Advise the client that government-backed loan programs are complex and often have stringent requirements, suggesting they focus solely on securing a conventional mortgage from a private bank to avoid potential complications. Option B. Tell the client that while such programs exist in other countries, the UAE does not offer comparable government-backed loan schemes for individual homebuyers, and therefore, they should only consider private financing. Option C. Assure the client that they will likely qualify for a government-backed loan program if they have a stable income and are purchasing a residential property, and proceed to show them properties within their perceived budget. Option D. Inform the client about the existence of government-backed housing initiatives in the UAE, such as those facilitated by the Emirates Housing Program, and explain that eligibility is determined by specific criteria set by the relevant UAE authorities, recommending they consult official government sources for detailed information. The correct answer is D. Inform the client about the existence of government-backed housing initiatives in the UAE, such as those facilitated by the Emirates Housing Program, and explain that eligibility is determined by specific criteria set by the relevant UAE authorities, recommending they consult official government sources for detailed information. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the real estate salesperson to navigate complex government-backed loan programs while ensuring compliance with UAE real estate regulations and ethical standards. Misrepresenting the availability or eligibility criteria for these loans can lead to significant financial repercussions for the buyer, damage the salesperson's reputation, and result in regulatory penalties. The salesperson must possess a thorough understanding of the nuances of each program and communicate this information accurately and transparently to potential buyers. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves accurately informing the client about the existence of government-backed loan programs in the UAE, such as those facilitated by the Emirates Housing Program (APE) or similar initiatives, and clearly explaining that eligibility is determined by specific criteria set by the relevant UAE authorities. This approach is correct because it aligns with the UAE's commitment to promoting homeownership through accessible financing and adheres to ethical obligations of transparency and honesty. Real estate professionals in the UAE are expected to guide clients towards appropriate resources and information without making definitive pronouncements on loan approval, which is solely within the purview of the lending institutions and government bodies. Providing general information about available programs and directing clients to official sources for detailed eligibility checks is the responsible and compliant course of action. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to guarantee a client's eligibility for a specific government-backed loan program based on a superficial understanding of their financial situation. This is ethically unsound and potentially violates UAE real estate regulations concerning misrepresentation. Loan eligibility is a complex assessment by the governing body, not a determination a salesperson can make. Another incorrect approach is to advise a client to disregard the eligibility requirements for government-backed loans, suggesting they can be bypassed. This is a direct violation of regulatory frameworks and promotes fraudulent activity, leading to severe penalties for both the client and the salesperson. A third incorrect approach is to focus solely on conventional mortgage options and fail to mention any government-backed loan programs that might be beneficial to the client. While not directly misleading, this omission can be considered a failure to act in the client's best interest, especially if the client's profile suggests they could benefit from such programs. This falls short of the professional duty to explore all relevant financial avenues. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a framework that prioritizes accurate information dissemination, client education, and adherence to regulatory guidelines. This involves understanding the general landscape of available financing, including government initiatives, and then guiding clients to the official sources for definitive information and application processes. A salesperson's role is to facilitate informed decision-making, not to act as a loan officer or guarantor. Question 7. When advising a potential client in Dubai on the merits of investing in a real estate investment trust rate, what is the most responsible and compliant approach to ensure full disclosure and ethical practice? Option A. Provide a balanced overview of the rate, detailing its potential benefits and inherent risks, and strongly recommend reviewing the official prospectus and consulting a financial advisor. Option B. Describe the rate as a completely risk-free investment vehicle that guarantees consistent income and capital appreciation. Option C. Emphasize the potential for significant capital gains and high rental yields, highlighting past performance as a strong indicator of future success. Option D. Focus exclusively on the tax advantages and the ease of trading rate units, without discussing the underlying property portfolio or market volatility. The correct answer is A. Provide a balanced overview of the rate, detailing its potential benefits and inherent risks, and strongly recommend reviewing the official prospectus and consulting a financial advisor. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a real estate salesperson in Dubai, UAE, concerning the promotion of real estate investment trusts, REIT. Challenge lies in ensuring that promotional activities are not only compliant with UAE laws and regulations governing financial promotions and real estate activities, but also ethically sound, avoiding misleading information or misrepresentation of investment risks. The salesperson must navigate the specific requirements of the Dubai Land Department, DLD, and the Securities and Commodities Authority, SCA, when discussing investment vehicles like REIT, which blend real estate and financial market aspects. Careful judgment is required to balance the desire to inform potential investors with the obligation to provide accurate and balanced information. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves providing a balanced overview of the REIT, clearly outlining both its potential benefits and inherent risks, and directing potential investors to official documentation. This approach involves explaining that REIT are investment funds that own income-generating real estate, allowing investors to participate in real estate markets without direct property ownership. Crucially, it would emphasize that, like all investments, REIT carry risks, including market fluctuations, interest rate changes, and property-specific issues, and that past performance is not indicative of future results. The salesperson would then strongly advise potential investors to review the REIT prospectus and consult with a qualified financial advisor before making any investment decisions. This aligns with the principles of transparency and investor protection mandated by UAE financial and real estate regulations, which require clear disclosure of risks and prohibit misleading promotions. Incorrect approaches analysis. Focusing solely on the potential for high returns and capital appreciation without mentioning the associated risks is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This misrepresents the investment and violates principles of fair dealing and investor protection. Such an approach could be construed as a misleading financial promotion under SCA regulations and could lead to DLD sanctions for misrepresentation. Presenting the REIT as a guaranteed income stream or a risk-free investment is also a direct contravention of regulatory requirements. All investments carry some level of risk, and presenting a REIT as risk-free is factually incorrect and highly misleading, potentially leading to severe penalties for the salesperson and their brokerage. Omitting any mention of the underlying real estate assets and focusing only on the financial structure of the trust would be incomplete and potentially misleading. Investors are investing in real estate, and understanding the nature, location, and performance of these assets is fundamental to an informed investment decision. This lack of transparency fails to meet the disclosure standards expected under UAE law. Professional reasoning. Professionals in Dubai should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes transparency, accuracy, and compliance. This involves thoroughly understanding the product being promoted, including its regulatory status and associated risks. Before engaging with potential investors, a salesperson should consult relevant DLD and SCA guidelines on financial promotions and real estate sales. The core principle should be to empower the investor with sufficient, accurate, and balanced information to make an informed decision, rather than to persuade them through selective or incomplete data. This includes always directing them to official disclosure documents and encouraging independent professional advice. Question 8. The review process indicates that some newly licensed real estate salespersons in the UAE are struggling to articulate the fundamental definition and importance of real estate beyond its immediate sale price. Considering the regulatory framework and ethical expectations for real estate professionals in the UAE, which of the following approaches best reflects a comprehensive and responsible understanding of real estate? Option A. Real estate is a tangible asset comprising land and any permanent structures upon it, holding significant value as a long-term investment, a contributor to economic stability, and a fundamental component of wealth creation and community development within the UAE. Option B. Real estate is defined solely as the physical land and buildings, without considering the legal rights, potential for future development, or its broader economic impact. Option C. Real estate is primarily about the transaction itself, and the salesperson's role is to facilitate the exchange of ownership for personal financial gain. Option D. Real estate is simply a commodity that can be bought and sold to generate profit, with the primary focus being on closing deals quickly to earn commissions. The correct answer is A. Real estate is a tangible asset comprising land and any permanent structures upon it, holding significant value as a long-term investment, a contributor to economic stability, and a fundamental component of wealth creation and community development within the UAE. Explanation. The review process indicates a common challenge faced by new real estate salespersons in the UAE, understanding the fundamental definition and importance of real estate beyond a simple transaction. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires salespersons to grasp the intrinsic value and multifaceted nature of real estate, which underpins their ethical obligations and the integrity of the market. Misinterpreting this can lead to misrepresentation, client dissatisfaction, and potential breaches of regulatory codes. The best professional approach involves a comprehensive understanding of real estate as a tangible asset with inherent value, influenced by economic, social, and legal factors, and recognizing its importance as a significant investment for individuals and a driver of economic growth for the UAE. This understanding is crucial for providing accurate advice, managing client expectations, and upholding the reputation of the profession. This aligns with the principles of professional conduct expected of licensed salespersons in the UAE, emphasizing transparency, knowledge, and client best interests, as implicitly required by the Dubai Land Department, DLD, and the Real Estate Regulatory Agency, RERAG guidelines that govern ethical practice and market integrity. An approach that focuses solely on the transactional aspect, viewing real estate merely as a commodity to be bought and sold for profit, fails to acknowledge its broader definition and importance. This perspective can lead to overlooking critical due diligence, misrepresenting the long-term value or risks associated with a property, and ultimately failing to act in the client's best interest, which is a cornerstone of ethical real estate practice in the UAE. Another incorrect approach is to define real estate narrowly as just the physical land and buildings, neglecting the associated rights, potential for development, and its role in wealth creation and community development. This limited view prevents a salesperson from advising clients on the full spectrum of opportunities and responsibilities that come with property ownership in the UAE, potentially leading to suboptimal investment decisions or overlooking legal encumbrances. Finally, an approach that prioritizes immediate commission over client education and long-term satisfaction demonstrates a significant ethical failure. This short-sighted perspective disregards the importance of building trust and a sustainable client relationship, which is vital for the long-term success of a real estate professional and the overall health of the UAE's real estate market. It can lead to clients feeling exploited or misled, damaging the salesperson's reputation and potentially incurring penalties under RERA regulations. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that begins with a thorough understanding of the core definition and significance of real estate, integrating this knowledge into every client interaction. This involves continuous learning, ethical reflection, and prioritizing client welfare and market integrity above personal gain. Question 9. Performance analysis shows that a real estate salesperson in Dubai is assisting a client with the purchase of an off-plan property. The client is eager to understand their ownership rights and is concerned about the security of their investment before the property is completed and the title deed is issued. What is the most appropriate course of action for the salesperson to ensure the client fully comprehends their property rights and investment security under Dubai's real estate regulations? Option A. Advise the client to disregard the specifics of the escrow account as it is a standard procedure and focus on the developer's reputation for timely project delivery. Option B. Assure the client that they will have full ownership of the property upon completion of payments, without elaborating on the interim ownership structure or the title deed issuance process. Option C. Provide the client with a detailed explanation of the off-plan purchase process, including the nature of their rights during the construction phase, the role of the escrow account, and the conditions for the eventual transfer of the title deed, referencing relevant RERA and DLD guidelines. Option D. Recommend that the client rely solely on the developer's verbal assurances regarding their future ownership rights and the security of their payments. The correct answer is C. Provide the client with a detailed explanation of the off-plan purchase process, including the nature of their rights during the construction phase, the role of the escrow account, and the conditions for the eventual transfer of the title deed, referencing relevant RERA and DLD guidelines. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because a real estate salesperson in Dubai must navigate complex property rights and ownership laws, particularly when dealing with off-plan properties and potential disputes. The salesperson's duty is to ensure clients understand their rights and obligations, which requires a thorough understanding of Dubai's Real Estate Regulatory Agency, RERA, regulations and the Dubai Land Department, DLD, framework. Misrepresenting or failing to disclose crucial information about ownership structures can lead to significant legal and financial repercussions for both the client and the salesperson. The best professional approach involves proactively educating the client about the specific ownership structure of the off-plan property, including the concept of a usufructuary right or a leasehold interest, and clearly explaining the implications for their long-term ownership and usage rights as governed by Dubai law. This includes detailing the developer's role, the escrow account provisions, and the conditions under which full ownership will be transferred. This approach is correct because it aligns with the RERA mandate for transparency and consumer protection, ensuring clients make informed decisions based on accurate information about their property rights in Dubai. An incorrect approach would be to assure the client that they will have full ownership immediately upon payment, without clarifying the nuances of off-plan ownership and the eventual transfer of title deed from the developer. This is ethically and regulatorily flawed, as it creates a false impression of immediate freehold ownership, which is not the case for off-plan purchases until registration with the DLD. Another incorrect approach is to downplay the importance of the escrow account and the developer's obligations, suggesting that the client's payments are directly secured against the property from the outset. This misrepresents the financial safeguards mandated by RERA and DLD, which are designed to protect purchasers' funds until project completion. Finally, advising the client to rely solely on the developer's verbal assurances regarding future ownership without providing documented explanations of their rights under Dubai law is also professionally unacceptable, as it bypasses the necessary due diligence and legal clarity required for property transactions in the Emirate. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that prioritizes client education and transparency. This involves thoroughly understanding the specific property's legal status, consulting relevant RERA and DLD guidelines, and communicating all ownership details, rights, and responsibilities clearly and in writing to the client. When faced with complex ownership structures, especially in off-plan sales, the professional's role is to act as a knowledgeable intermediary, ensuring the client is fully informed and protected under Dubai's real estate laws. Question 10. The performance metrics show a consistent increase in property inquiries for a salesperson operating in Dubai. A potential seller approaches the salesperson to list their property, and shortly after, a different buyer expresses strong interest in purchasing a property similar to the one listed. The salesperson believes they can effectively represent both parties in this transaction. Considering the Real Estate Regulatory Agency, RERA, guidelines in Dubai, what is the most appropriate and legally compliant course of action for the salesperson to manage this situation? Option A. Prioritize the interests of the buyer, as they represent a new potential sale, and disclose the dual agency to the seller only after securing a preliminary offer from the buyer. Option B. Inform both the seller and the buyer that dual agency is not permissible under RERA regulations and decline to represent one of the parties. Option C. Obtain explicit written consent from both the seller and the buyer for dual agency, clearly outlining the scope of representation and potential conflicts before proceeding with representing both parties. Option D. Proceed with representing both the seller and the buyer based on a verbal agreement, assuming that their mutual interest in the transaction implies consent for dual agency. The correct answer is C. Obtain explicit written consent from both the seller and the buyer for dual agency, clearly outlining the scope of representation and potential conflicts before proceeding with representing both parties. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in real estate agency, particularly in the Emirate of Dubai, where clarity and adherence to regulatory frameworks are paramount. The professional challenge lies in navigating the potential for conflicts of interest and ensuring full disclosure and informed consent when representing multiple parties in a transaction. The salesperson must balance their duty to their client S with the legal and ethical obligations imposed by the Real Estate Regulatory Agency, RERA, in Dubai. Careful judgment is required to maintain trust, avoid legal repercussions, and uphold professional standards. The best professional approach involves meticulously documenting the agency relationship and obtaining explicit, Written consent for dual agency. This means clearly defining the scope of representation for both the seller and the buyer, outlining the specific duties owed to each party, and acknowledging the inherent limitations and potential conflicts that arise from representing both sides. This approach aligns with RERA's emphasis on transparency and consumer protection, ensuring that all parties are fully aware of the salesperson's role and responsibilities. By proactively addressing potential conflicts and securing informed consent, the salesperson demonstrates a commitment to ethical practice and regulatory compliance. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with representing both the seller and the buyer without obtaining explicit written consent for dual agency, assuming that verbal agreement is sufficient. This directly violates RERA regulations, which mandate written agreements for all agency relationships. Such an omission creates a significant ethical and legal vulnerability, as it fails to provide the necessary transparency and documentation required to protect all parties involved and the salesperson themselves. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize the interests of one party over the other once dual agency has been established, without clear justification or prior agreement. This breaches the fiduciary duty owed to both clients, even in a dual agency scenario where duties are modified. RERA expects agents to act impartially and in the best interests of all parties to the extent possible within the agreed-upon agency framework. A further incorrect approach is to fail to disclose the dual agency relationship to both the seller and the buyer at the earliest opportunity. Delaying or omitting this crucial disclosure erodes trust and can lead to disputes, as parties may not be aware of the salesperson's divided loyalties and the potential implications for their transaction. This lack of transparency is a direct contravention of ethical agency principles and RERA disclosure requirements. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes regulatory compliance and ethical conduct. This involves understanding the specific requirements of RERA concerning agency agreements, disclosure obligations, and conflict of interest management. Before entering any agency relationship, professionals must clearly identify the type of agency, document it in writing, and obtain all necessary consents. In situations involving potential dual agency, a thorough assessment of whether such representation is feasible and ethical, followed by comprehensive disclosure and written consent, is essential. Continuous education on RERA regulations and best practices in agency law is also critical for maintaining professional integrity. Question 11. Investigation of a landlord's request to evict a tenant from a property in Dubai, UAE, reveals the landlord's primary motivation is to re-rent the property at a significantly higher market rate. The landlord has not occupied the property for personal use or sale, nor has the tenant committed any material breach of the lease agreement as defined by Dubai law. What is the legally compliant and ethically sound course of action for the real estate salesperson to advise the landlord? Option A. Advise the landlord to initiate eviction proceedings through the Dubai Court of First Instance immediately, citing general dissatisfaction with the tenant's occupancy. Option B. Advise the landlord to inform the tenant verbally that they must vacate the property within 30 days, as the landlord wishes to re-rent it at a higher rate. Option C. Advise the landlord to issue a notice to the tenant stating the intention to increase the rent substantially, and if the tenant refuses to pay, proceed with eviction based on non-compliance with the new rent. Option D. Advise the landlord that eviction is not permissible under these circumstances according to Dubai tenancy laws and RERA regulations, and explain the legal grounds and procedural requirements for valid evictions. The correct answer is D. Advise the landlord that eviction is not permissible under these circumstances according to Dubai tenancy laws and RERA regulations, and explain the legal grounds and procedural requirements for valid evictions. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because a real estate salesperson in Dubai, UAE, is tasked with advising a landlord on the eviction process. The challenge lies in navigating the specific legal framework governing landlord-tenant relationships and evictions in Dubai, which is governed by Dubai Law No. 26 of 2007, as amended by Law No. 33 of 2008, and the regulations enforced by the Real Estate Regulatory Agency, RERA. Misinterpreting or misapplying these laws can lead to significant legal repercussions for both the landlord and the tenant, as well as damage to the salesperson's professional reputation and potential disciplinary action from RERA. The salesperson must possess a thorough understanding of the permissible grounds for eviction, the required notice periods, and the procedural steps mandated by Dubai law. The best approach involves accurately advising the landlord on the legal grounds for eviction as stipulated by Dubai Law No. 26 of 2007 and its amendments. This includes understanding that eviction is only permissible for specific reasons such as the landlord acquiring the property for personal use or sale, or the tenant breaching contractual obligations as defined by law. The salesperson must then guide the landlord on the mandatory requirement to serve a formal eviction notice through the Dubai Land Department, DLD, or a notary public, adhering to the prescribed notice periods, typically 12 months for reasons like personal use or sale. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the legal framework established by Dubai law, ensuring that the landlord's actions are lawful and protect the rights of both parties. It demonstrates professional competence and adherence to regulatory requirements, preventing potential legal disputes and penalties. An incorrect approach would be to advise the landlord to initiate eviction proceedings based on vague or non-statutory reasons, such as the landlord simply wanting to increase the rent significantly beyond legal limits, or to re-rent the property to a new tenant at a higher rate without valid legal grounds. This is a regulatory failure, because Dubai law strictly defines the permissible grounds for eviction and does not permit it for arbitrary financial gain or convenience. Another incorrect approach would be to advise the landlord to bypass the formal notice procedures mandated by the DLD or a notary public, and instead rely on informal communication or self-prepared notices. This is a critical procedural failure and a violation of RERA regulations, as it undermines the legal validity of the eviction process and can render any eviction attempt invalid, potentially leading to legal challenges and penalties for the landlord. Furthermore, advising the landlord to physically force the tenant out or to cut off essential services is illegal and unethical, constituting a severe breach of tenant rights and Dubai tenancy laws. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that prioritizes a comprehensive understanding of the relevant Dubai tenancy laws and RERA regulations. This involves continuous professional development to stay updated on any amendments. When faced with an eviction scenario, the salesperson should first ascertain the specific reason for the landlord's desire to evict, and then cross-reference this with the legally permissible grounds. If the grounds are valid, the salesperson must then meticulously guide the landlord through the prescribed legal procedures, emphasizing the importance of formal, legally recognized notice delivery and adherence to all timelines. Seeking clarification from RERA or legal counsel, when in doubt, is also a crucial part of responsible professional conduct. Question 12. Comparative studies suggest that environmental regulations are increasingly influencing real estate transactions. In Dubai, a real estate salesperson is marketing a property located in an area known for its historical industrial activity. While the property itself appears well maintained, the salesperson is aware that past industrial use in the vicinity could potentially have environmental implications. What is the most responsible and legally compliant course of action for the salesperson to take? Option A. Recommend that the client simply inquire with the seller about any past environmental issues and accept the seller's verbal response as sufficient. Option B. State definitively to the client that there are no environmental risks associated with the property due to its current appearance and the seller's assurances. Option C. Advise the client that, while the property appears fine, it is prudent to engage an independent environmental consultant to conduct a thorough assessment of potential historical environmental impacts and advise on any necessary compliance measures. Option D. Assure the client that since the property is currently in good condition and there are no visible signs of contamination, environmental concerns are unlikely to be an issue. The correct answer is C. Advise the client that while the property appears fine, it is prudent to engage an independent environmental consultant to conduct a thorough assessment of potential historical environmental impacts and advise on any necessary compliance measures. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a real estate salesperson in Dubai to navigate the intersection of environmental considerations and real estate transactions, a growing area of regulatory focus. The challenge lies in accurately assessing and communicating potential environmental impacts without overstepping professional boundaries or providing unqualified advice, while also ensuring compliance with Dubai's specific environmental laws and real estate regulations. Misinformation or a lack of diligence can lead to significant legal and reputational consequences for the salesperson and their brokerage. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves proactively identifying potential environmental concerns that are publicly documented or commonly associated with the property's location, and advising the client to seek expert consultation. This approach acknowledges the salesperson's role as a facilitator of information and transactions, not an environmental expert. It aligns with the principles of due diligence and transparency expected of real estate professionals in Dubai, as mandated by regulations like those overseen by the Dubai Municipality's Environmental Department and the Real Estate Regulatory Agency, RERA. By recommending independent professional assessment, the salesperson ensures the client receives accurate, authoritative information regarding environmental compliance and potential impacts, thereby mitigating risk and upholding ethical standards. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves downplaying or ignoring potential environmental issues, even if they are not immediately obvious. This failure to exercise due diligence violates ethical obligations and potentially contravenes Dubai's environmental protection laws, which aim to prevent or mitigate harm to the environment. Such an approach can lead to undisclosed liabilities for the buyer and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach is to offer definitive opinions or solutions regarding environmental compliance or remediation. Real estate salespersons are not qualified environmental consultants. Providing such advice constitutes practicing outside one's professional scope, potentially leading to incorrect assessments and legal ramifications for both the client and the salesperson, and failing to adhere to the professional standards set by RERA. A further incorrect approach is to rely solely on the seller's assurances regarding environmental matters without any independent verification or recommendation for expert review. While sellers may provide information, salespersons have a duty to ensure the information provided to buyers is accurate and complete to the best of their ability, which includes advising on the need for professional environmental assessments when warranted. This omission can lead to the buyer being misled about the property's environmental status. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a framework of proactive inquiry, transparent communication, and reliance on qualified experts. When faced with potential environmental considerations, the first step is to identify any readily available information or common environmental risks associated with the property's locale. The next step is to communicate these potential concerns to the client clearly and without alarm. Crucially, the professional should then advise the client to engage independent, qualified environmental consultants or relevant government bodies for definitive assessments and advice. This ensures that all parties are acting on accurate, expert-backed information, thereby fulfilling legal and ethical obligations. Question 13. The investigation demonstrates that a real estate salesperson in Dubai is tasked with providing an estimated market value for a 3-bedroom villa in a well-established residential community. The salesperson has access to recent sales data for similar villas in the same community, as well as information on current rental yields for properties in the area and details on the construction costs of comparable new builds. Considering the regulatory environment and ethical obligations in Dubai, which valuation method should the salesperson prioritize and why? Option A. Income approach by projecting future rental income and applying a capitalization rate. Option B. Comparative market analysis by examining recent sales of similar properties in the immediate vicinity. Option C. Cost approach by estimating the cost to replace the villa, accounting for depreciation, and adding the land value. Option D. A hybrid approach combining elements of all three methods without a clear prioritization. The correct answer is B. Comparative market analysis by examining recent sales of similar properties in the immediate vicinity. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a real estate salesperson in Dubai, UAE, due to the inherent subjectivity in property valuation and the critical need to adhere to the Dubai Land Department (DLD) regulations and ethical guidelines. Misrepresenting a property's value can lead to significant financial repercussions for clients, damage the salesperson's reputation, and incur penalties from the DLD. The salesperson must exercise sound judgment and employ appropriate valuation methods to provide an accurate and defensible estimate of market value. The most appropriate approach in this scenario is the comparative market analysis. This method is correct because it directly aligns with the principles of establishing fair market value by analyzing recent sales of similar properties in the immediate vicinity. In Dubai, the DLD emphasizes transparency and accuracy in property transactions. The comparative market analysis, when conducted diligently with up-to-date data from the DLD's own records and reputable real estate portals, provides a robust and defensible valuation. It is ethically sound as it is based on observable market data rather than speculative future income or hypothetical replacement costs, thereby minimizing the risk of misrepresentation and fulfilling the salesperson's duty of care to their client. Using the income approach would be inappropriate in this context. While valuable for investment properties, it relies on projecting future rental income and applying capitalization rates, which are speculative and can be influenced by market fluctuations and management efficiency. This introduces a level of uncertainty that is less desirable for a standard residential property valuation, where the primary goal is to ascertain current market worth based on comparable sales. It fails to provide a direct reflection of what a buyer would likely pay based on recent transactions for similar properties. The cost approach is also unsuitable for this specific scenario. This method estimates the cost to replace the property minus depreciation plus land value. It is primarily used for unique properties, new constructions, or insurance purposes, where comparable sales data might be scarce. For a standard residential property with available comparable sales, the cost approach does not accurately reflect the current market demand and buyer behavior, which are the driving forces behind actual sale prices. Relying on this method would ignore the most direct indicators of market value and could lead to a valuation that is significantly out of sync with what buyers are willing to pay. Professionals should adopt a systematic decision-making process when faced with valuation tasks. This involves first understanding the purpose of the valuation and the type of property. Then, they should identify the most relevant valuation methods based on the property type and the availability of data. For standard residential properties in Dubai, the comparative market analysis is typically the most reliable and regulatorily supported method. The salesperson must then gather accurate and recent data, apply the chosen method rigorously, and be prepared to explain the rationale behind their valuation to the client and any relevant authorities, ensuring transparency and compliance with DLD guidelines. Question 14. Assessment of the most appropriate course of action for a Dubai-based real estate salesperson managing a rented property when the tenant reports a leaking faucet in the bathroom and a cracked tile in the kitchen, with the owner currently out of the country for an extended period. Option A. Proceed with the faucet repair using a contractor the salesperson has used before and has a good working relationship with, and inform the tenant that the tile will be replaced upon the owner's return. Option B. Immediately engage a licensed plumber to fix the faucet and a qualified tiler to replace the cracked tile, obtaining written quotes from both professionals and submitting them to the owner for approval via email before commencing any work. Option C. Arrange for the repairs to be completed by the building's maintenance team without informing the owner, assuming these are minor issues that fall within routine maintenance. Option D. Instruct the tenant to contact the building's maintenance directly to resolve the issues, as the owner is unavailable. The correct answer is B. Immediately engage a licensed plumber to fix the faucet and a qualified tiler to replace the cracked tile, obtaining written quotes from both professionals and submitting them to the owner for approval via email before commencing any work. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge for real estate salespersons in Dubai, requiring them to navigate the practicalities of property maintenance while adhering to the regulatory framework governing their profession. The challenge lies in balancing the owner's instructions with the legal obligations and ethical responsibilities of the salesperson, particularly when dealing with potential disputes or differing opinions on the necessity and scope of repairs. A salesperson must act as a responsible intermediary, ensuring that maintenance is handled appropriately without overstepping their authority or neglecting their duty of care. The best approach involves clear, documented communication and adherence to the terms of the management agreement. This means obtaining written approval from the owner for any significant repairs, providing detailed quotes from qualified professionals, and ensuring that all work complies with Dubai's building codes and regulations. This method upholds transparency, protects the owner's financial interests, and ensures that maintenance is performed to a satisfactory standard, thereby fulfilling the salesperson's contractual and ethical obligations under the Real Estate Regulatory Agency (RERA) guidelines. Failing to obtain written owner approval for substantial repairs, even if seemingly minor, constitutes a breach of trust and potentially the management agreement. It exposes the owner to unexpected costs and bypasses their right to make informed decisions about their property. Similarly, proceeding with repairs based solely on a tenant's verbal request, without verifying the urgency or necessity with the owner and obtaining their consent, is unprofessional and risky. This can lead to disputes over payment and the quality of work. Relying on a single contractor without obtaining multiple quotes for significant work also raises concerns about cost-effectiveness and potential conflicts of interest, failing to demonstrate due diligence and a commitment to securing the best value for the owner. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the scope of their authority as defined in the property management agreement. They should then establish a clear communication protocol with the owner, outlining how repair requests will be handled, including thresholds for immediate action versus requiring explicit approval. For any repair exceeding a predefined minor cost, a formal process of obtaining multiple quotes from reputable, licensed contractors, presenting these to the owner with a recommendation, and securing written authorization before proceeding is crucial. This systematic approach ensures accountability, transparency, and compliance with professional standards and RERA regulations. Question 15. Quality control measures reveal that a real estate salesperson in Dubai is preparing to market a property and is describing the ownership structure to potential buyers. The property is registered as a freehold title in a designated freehold area, granting the buyer full ownership of the land and any structures on it indefinitely. The salesperson is also dealing with another property that is a long-term leasehold interest, granting the right to occupy and use the property for 99 years. In a third scenario, two unrelated individuals are purchasing a property together, each contributing different amounts to the purchase price and intending to own distinct, potentially unequal shares. How should the salesperson accurately represent these different ownership structures to avoid misrepresentation and ensure compliance with Dubai Land Department regulations? Option A. Clearly identify each property's ownership as fee simple, leasehold, or tenancy in common, explaining the specific rights and duration associated with each, and ensuring all documentation accurately reflects these distinctions. Option B. Describe the freehold property as fee simple. Refer to the leasehold property as a form of long-term ownership and the co-owned property as a joint venture, without detailing specific share percentages or survivorship rights. Option C. Explain the freehold property as fee simple, but present the leasehold property as equivalent to fee simple ownership for practical purposes, and describe the co-owned property as joint tenancy, implying equal ownership and automatic survivorship. Option D. Refer to all properties as owned and focus on the property's features and amenities, assuming buyers understand the general concept of property ownership. Correct answer is A. Clearly identify each property's ownership as fee simple, leasehold, or tenancy in common, explaining the specific rights and duration associated with each, and ensuring all documentation accurately reflects these distinctions. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential for misrepresentation of property rights, which can lead to significant legal and financial disputes for both the seller and the buyer. Understanding the nuances of different ownership types is crucial for a real estate salesperson in the UAE to provide accurate advice and ensure compliance with the Dubai Land Department (DLD) regulations. The salesperson must exercise careful judgment to avoid misleading clients about the nature and extent of their property rights. The best professional approach involves clearly identifying the specific type of ownership being transferred and ensuring all documentation accurately reflects this. This means the salesperson must be able to distinguish between fee simple ownership, full ownership rights, typically for freehold properties in designated areas, leasehold, the right to occupy and use a property for a defined period, often with ground rent payable, joint tenancy, where two or more individuals own the property equally, with rights of survivorship, though less common in the UAE for residential property compared to other models, and tenancy in common, where two or more individuals own distinct, undivided shares of the property, which can be unequal and do not automatically pass to other co-owners upon death. By accurately describing the ownership type and ensuring the sale and purchase agreement (SPA) precisely details these rights. The salesperson upholds their duty of care and adheres to DLD requirements for property transactions, preventing future disputes and ensuring a transparent process. An incorrect approach would be to broadly refer to the property as owned, without specifying the nature of that ownership. This fails to acknowledge the critical distinctions between freehold and leasehold, which have vastly different implications for the buyer's rights and the duration of their interest in the property. Such vagueness can lead to a buyer believing they are acquiring full freehold title when they are actually acquiring a leasehold interest, a significant misrepresentation that violates ethical standards and DLD regulations concerning the disclosure of property rights. Another incorrect approach is to assume that all co-ownership in the UAE automatically follows the principles of joint tenancy, where ownership is shared equally and automatically passes to the surviving owner. While co-ownership exists, the UAE legal framework, particularly concerning property, often leans towards principles more akin to tenancy in common, where shares can be unequal and inheritance is governed by Sharia law or specific wills. Misrepresenting co-ownership as joint tenancy can lead to complications in inheritance and property distribution, contravening legal requirements and causing distress to the parties involved. A further incorrect approach is to conflate the rights associated with fee simple ownership with those of a long-term leasehold. While both grant the right to use and occupy, fee simple represents full ownership of the land and any structures on it, whereas leasehold is a right to use for a specified term. Presenting a leasehold property as if it were fee simple is a fundamental misrepresentation of the buyer's rights and the nature of the asset being transferred, which is a serious breach of professional conduct and DLD regulations. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes accurate disclosure and client education. This involves 1. Thoroughly understanding the specific property's title and ownership structure as registered with the DLD. 2. Clearly explaining the implications of the identified ownership type to the client, using plain language and avoiding jargon. 3. Ensuring all contractual documents, particularly the SBA, precisely reflect the agreed-upon ownership type and associated rights. 4. Seeking clarification from legal experts or the DLD if there is any ambiguity regarding the property's title. Question 16. Regulatory review indicates that a real estate salesperson in Dubai, who has been exclusively representing a seller for several months and has built a strong rapport, is approached by a potential buyer who is interested in the seller's property. The salesperson has not yet informed the seller about this new potential buyer. What is the most appropriate course of action for the salesperson to ensure compliance with UAE real estate law and ethical standards? Option A. Proceed with showing the property to the potential buyer and negotiating an offer, assuming that their primary duty is to secure a sale for the seller. Option B. Immediately inform the seller about the interested buyer and then approach the buyer to disclose their existing relationship with the seller, seeking consent from both parties to proceed with facilitating the transaction. Option C. Discreetly facilitate communication between the buyer and seller without mentioning their prior exclusive representation agreement with the seller. Option D. Inform the seller that they can no longer represent the buyer due to a potential conflict of interest and advise the buyer to seek independent representation. The correct answer is B. Immediately inform the seller about the interested buyer and then approach the buyer to disclose their existing relationship with the seller, seeking consent from both parties to proceed with facilitating the transaction. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a real estate salesperson to navigate potential conflicts of interest and ensure compliance with the UAE's Real Estate Regulatory Agency, RERA, guidelines, specifically concerning disclosure and fair dealing. The salesperson must prioritize transparency and avoid any action that could be perceived as misleading or exploitative. The correct approach involves immediately disclosing the potential conflict of interest to both parties involved and seeking their informed consent before proceeding. This aligns with RERA's emphasis on ethical conduct and the duty of a salesperson to act in the best interests of their clients while maintaining impartiality. By proactively informing both the seller and the potential buyer about their existing relationship with the seller, the salesperson upholds the principles of transparency and fairness mandated by UAE real estate law. This allows both parties to make informed decisions about whether to proceed with the transaction and whether they are comfortable with the salesperson's continued involvement. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the transaction without disclosing the existing relationship with the seller. This failure to disclose constitutes a breach of ethical obligations and potentially violates RERA regulations regarding transparency and conflicts of interest. It could lead to accusations of favoritism towards the seller, undermining the buyer's trust and potentially leading to legal repercussions. Another incorrect approach would be to attempt to conceal the relationship by acting as an intermediary, without any explicit mention of their prior dealings with the seller. This deceptive practice is unethical and directly contravenes the spirit and letter of RERA disclosure requirements. It creates an environment of mistrust and can result in severe penalties for the salesperson and their brokerage. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to withdraw from representing the buyer solely because of the existing relationship with the seller, without offering any explanation or attempting to facilitate a transparent process. While withdrawing might seem like a way to avoid conflict, it fails to address the core issue of disclosure and potentially leaves both parties in an uncertain position. The professional expectation is to manage the conflict through open communication and consent, not by unilateral withdrawal without proper explanation. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes transparency, ethical conduct, and adherence to regulatory requirements. When faced with a potential conflict of interest, the first step should always be to identify the conflict, assess its implications, and then communicate openly with all affected parties. Seeking informed consent is paramount, ensuring that all parties are aware of the situation and agree to the proposed course of action. This proactive and transparent approach is crucial for maintaining professional integrity and complying with the stringent regulations set forth by RERA in the UAE. Question 17. Consider a scenario where a real estate salesperson in Dubai is approached by a developer eager to market a new off-plan residential project. The developer claims to have submitted all necessary documentation to the Dubai Land Department, DLD, for project approval, and is awaiting the final go-ahead, but has not yet received official confirmation. The salesperson is eager to secure a listing and generate sales. What is the most responsible and legally compliant course of action for the salesperson to take in Dubai? Option A. Proceed with marketing the property and accepting a reservation fee, relying on the developer's assurance that DLD approval is imminent. Option B. Verify the developer's registration and the project's approval status directly with the Dubai Land Department before commencing any marketing or accepting any reservation fees. Option C. Accept a reservation fee and initiate the sales process while the salesperson's brokerage submits an application for DLD approval on behalf of the developer. Option D. Begin marketing the property and accepting reservation fees based on the developer's verbal confirmation that they have submitted all required documents to the DLD. The correct answer is B. Verify the developer's registration and the project's approval status directly with the Dubai Land Department before commencing any marketing or accepting any reservation fees. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because a real estate salesperson in Dubai must navigate the complexities of the Dubai Land Department (DLD) regulations and the RERA Real Estate Regulatory Agency framework when dealing with off-plan properties. Misinterpreting or failing to adhere to these regulations can lead to legal disputes, financial penalties for the salesperson and their brokerage, and damage to client trust. The salesperson's duty is to ensure all transactions are conducted transparently and in compliance with the law, protecting both the buyer and seller. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves proactively verifying the developer's registration and the project's approval status with the DLD before marketing or accepting any funds. This approach directly aligns with Article 4 of the Dubai Real Estate Law, Law No. 13 of 2008, as amended by Law No. 9 of 2009, concerning the regulation of the real estate sector in the Emirate of Dubai, which mandates that off-plan properties can only be marketed and sold after obtaining the necessary approvals from the DLD and registering the project. By confirming the DLD's approval, the salesperson ensures the developer is legally permitted to sell the units, the project is legitimate, and the buyer's investment is protected under the established regulatory framework. Incorrect approaches analysis. Marketing the property and accepting a reservation fee without first confirming the developer's registration and project approval with the DLD is a direct violation of the RERA regulations. This action bypasses essential legal safeguards, designed to protect buyers from fraudulent or unapproved developments. It exposes the salesperson and their brokerage to significant legal repercussions, including fines and potential license suspension, and places the buyer at high risk of financial loss. Proceeding with marketing and accepting a reservation fee based solely on the developer's verbal assurance of upcoming DLD approval is also a failure to comply. Verbal assurances do not constitute legal authorization. The RERAF framework requires documented proof of DLD approval before any sales activities can commence. Relying on informal assurances disregards the due diligence required by law and exposes all parties to considerable risk. Accepting a reservation fee and initiating the sales process while simultaneously submitting an application for DLD approval is an attempt to circumvent the established regulatory timeline. The law clearly states that approval must be obtained before marketing and sales activities begin. This approach demonstrates a lack of understanding or willful disregard for the legal prerequisites for off-plan property transactions in Dubai, leading to an illegal sale and potential penalties. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a proactive and compliance-first mindset. When dealing with off-plan properties in Dubai, the primary step is always to consult the official DLD portal or contact the DLD directly to verify the developer's licensing and the specific project's approval status. This due diligence should be completed before any marketing or financial commitments are made. If information is unclear or unverified, the salesperson must refrain from proceeding until all legal requirements are met. This systematic approach ensures adherence to the Dubai real estate law and RERA guidelines, safeguarding client interests and maintaining professional integrity. Question 18. Upon reviewing the current rental market in Dubai for a vacant villa owned by a client, a property manager observes that comparable properties are renting for approximately 10% less than the owner's initial asking price. The owner is keen to achieve the higher rent. What is the most responsible course of action for the property manager to take? Option A. Immediately reduce the rental asking price by 15% without consulting the owner to expedite the rental process. Option B. Inform the owner that the market is strong and suggest they hold firm on the asking price, hoping a tenant will eventually agree, without providing detailed comparable market data. Option C. Advise the owner with data-backed insights on current market rental rates. Explain the potential impact of the higher asking price on vacancy duration, and propose a revised, market-aligned rental strategy. Option D. Focus on securing any tenant quickly to minimize vacancy, even if it means accepting a tenant with a less-than-ideal financial background or lease terms. The correct answer is C. Advise the owner with data-backed insights on current market rental rates, explain the potential impact of the higher asking price on vacancy duration, and propose a revised, market-aligned rental strategy. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a property manager's duty to the property owner and their obligation to ensure fair and transparent dealings with potential tenants, all within the regulatory framework of Dubai, United Arab Emirates. The property manager must balance maximizing the owner's return on investment with upholding ethical standards and adhering to Dubai's real estate laws, particularly those governing rental agreements and tenant rights. Missteps can lead to legal repercussions, reputational damage, and loss of trust from both owners and tenants. The best approach involves proactive and transparent communication with the property owner regarding market conditions and realistic rental expectations. This includes providing data-backed advice on pricing, highlighting the importance of property maintenance for attracting quality tenants, and clearly outlining the marketing strategy. This approach is correct because it aligns with the property manager's fiduciary duty to the owner, as stipulated by general principles of agency and implicitly supported by the Dubai Land Department's DLD guidelines on professional conduct. It fosters a collaborative relationship, ensuring the owner is well-informed and can make sound decisions. Furthermore, it sets realistic expectations, preventing future disputes and demonstrating a commitment to ethical property management practices that ultimately benefit the property's long-term value and tenant satisfaction. An approach that involves withholding information about lower comparable rental rates to pressure the owner into accepting a higher, potentially unachievable rent is ethically unsound and potentially violates principles of good faith and transparency expected of real estate professionals in Dubai. This could be seen as misleading the owner and not acting in their best interest. Another incorrect approach, that of immediately lowering the rent significantly without consulting the owner or exploring other marketing strategies, fails to uphold the property manager's duty to maximize the owner's return. It suggests a lack of diligence in marketing and negotiation, and could lead to the owner feeling their property is undervalued, potentially breaching the agency agreement. Finally, an approach that focuses solely on securing any tenant quickly without proper screening or consideration of the lease terms, even if it means accepting a tenant who may not be a good long-term fit or who might violate lease conditions, neglects the property manager's responsibility to protect the owner's asset and ensure a stable rental income. This could lead to future issues with arrears, property damage, or evictions, all of which are detrimental to the owner's interests and reflect poor professional judgment. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that prioritizes clear communication, data-driven advice, and adherence to ethical principles and relevant Dubai real estate regulations. This involves understanding the owner's objectives, assessing market realities, developing a comprehensive marketing plan, and maintaining transparency throughout the leasing process. Question 19. When evaluating a seller's request to list their property in Dubai, what is the most prudent approach for a real estate salesperson to recommend regarding the type of listing agreement, considering the seller's desire for broad market exposure and the salesperson's need for clear contractual terms and commission security under UAE law? Option A. Advise the seller to list the property without any formal agreement to allow for maximum flexibility. Option B. Propose an exclusive agency agreement, emphasizing the seller's ability to find a buyer independently to avoid commission. Option C. Recommend an exclusive right to sell agreement, clearly outlining the commission structure and the salesperson's commitment to comprehensive marketing efforts. Option D. Suggest an open listing agreement, highlighting the potential for multiple agents to market the property simultaneously. The correct answer is C. Recommend an exclusive right to sell agreement, clearly outlining the commission structure and the salesperson's commitment to comprehensive marketing efforts. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the real estate salesperson to balance the seller's desire for maximum exposure with the potential for conflicting interests and the need for clear contractual agreements under UAE law. Misunderstanding the implications of different listing agreements can lead to disputes, loss of commission, and damage to professional reputation. Careful judgment is required to select the agreement that best serves the client's objectives while adhering to regulatory requirements. The best approach involves clearly explaining the nuances of each listing agreement type to the seller and recommending the agreement that aligns with their stated goals and risk tolerance, while ensuring full compliance with UAE real estate regulations, particularly those governing agency agreements and disclosure. This includes advising the seller on the implications of exclusivity, commission structures, and the salesperson's obligations under each type. An exclusive right to sell agreement is the most appropriate choice when the seller desires maximum marketing effort and is willing to commit to paying the commission regardless of who procures the buyer. This agreement incentivizes the salesperson to invest significant resources in marketing and negotiation, as their commission is guaranteed. UAE real estate law emphasizes transparency and clear contractual terms, and this agreement provides the salesperson with the necessary assurance to undertake extensive marketing efforts, thereby maximizing the chances of a sale for the seller. An exclusive agency agreement, while granting the salesperson the sole right to market the property, allows the seller to find a buyer independently and avoid paying a commission. This can be problematic as it creates a disincentive for the salesperson to invest heavily in marketing if they risk not receiving compensation. It can also lead to disputes if the seller claims to have found the buyer independently, even if the salesperson's efforts were instrumental. This arrangement may not fully align with the salesperson's professional duty to diligently market the property when their commission is not guaranteed. An open listing agreement, where multiple agents can market the property and the seller can also sell it themselves, is generally not recommended for a professional salesperson. This arrangement significantly dilutes the salesperson's motivation and investment, as they only earn a commission if they are the procuring cause of the sale, and even then, they might have to compete with other agents and the seller. This can lead to a lack of focused marketing effort and potentially a lower sale price due to fragmented promotion. It also presents challenges in tracking leads and ensuring proper disclosure to all parties involved, which is crucial under UAE real estate practices. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes client education and informed consent. This involves understanding the client's objectives, explaining the legal and practical implications of each listing agreement type, and recommending the option that best balances the client's needs with the salesperson's ability to provide diligent service and earn a fair commission, all within the bounds of UAE real estate law. Question 20. A real estate salesperson in Dubai is advising a client on a property purchase financed by a mortgage. The client is considering a loan of AED 1,500,000 with an annual interest rate of 4.5% over a term of 25 years. What is the approximate total amount the client will repay over the entire loan term, and what is the approximate monthly installment? Option A. Approximate monthly installment, ED 8 338. 65. Approximate total repayment, ED 2 501 595. Option B. Approximate monthly installment, ED 6 750. 00. Approximate total repayment, ED 2 501 595. Option C. Approximate monthly installment, ED 5 625. 00. Approximate total repayment, ED 2 350. 000. Option D. Approximate monthly installment, ED 8 338. 65. Approximate total repayment, ED 1 837 500. The correct answer is A. Approximate monthly installment, ED 8 338. 65. Approximate total repayment, ED 2 501 595. Explanation. The analysis reveals a scenario that is professionally challenging due to the inherent complexity of real estate financing and the critical need for accuracy in financial calculations. A real estate salesperson in Dubai must possess a thorough understanding of mortgage calculations to advise clients effectively and ethically, ensuring they are aware of the true cost of their investment. Miscalculations can lead to significant financial distress for the buyer and potential legal repercussions for the salesperson. The salesperson's role extends beyond mere property listing. It involves providing accurate financial guidance within the regulatory framework of Dubai. The best approach involves accurately calculating the total repayment amount by considering the principal loan amount, the annual interest rate, and the loan term, and then determining the monthly installment. This is achieved by using the standard mortgage payment formula. Specifically, for a loan of AED 1,500,000 at an annual interest rate of 4.5% over 25 years. The monthly interest rate is \frac 0.04512 equals 0.00375 \. The total number of payments is \25 times 12 equals 300 \. The monthly payment m can be calculated using the formula m equals p left frac I 1 plus I and 1 plus I in 1 right where p is the principal loan amount ED 1,500,000 I is the monthly interest rate 0.00375 and n is the total number of payments 300 m equals 1,500,000 left frac 0.00375 1 plus 0.00375 300 1 plus 0.00375 301 right m equals 1,500,000 left frac 0.00375 1 0.00375 300 1 0.00375 301 right m equals 1,500,000 left frac 0.00375 times 3 0.7296 3 0.7296 1 right m equals 1,500,000 left frac 0.01152362 0.7296 right m approx 1,500,000 times 0.0055591 m approx 8 338 65 the total repayment is then m times n approx 8 338 65 times 300 approx 2 501 595 . This approach is correct because it adheres to the principles of accurate financial calculation as expected of a licensed real estate professional in Dubai, ensuring transparency and informed decision-making for the client. An approach that calculates the total interest by simply multiplying the principal by the annual interest rate and then by the number of years, and adding this to the principal, is incorrect. This method ignores the compounding effect of interest, which is fundamental to mortgage calculations. It would result in a significantly underestimated total repayment amount, misleading the client about the true cost of the loan. Another incorrect approach would be to only calculate the monthly payment without determining the total repayment amount. While the monthly payment is a crucial component, comprehensive understanding requires knowing the total amount repaid over the life of the loan, including all interest. Failing to provide this total figure leaves the client with an incomplete picture of their financial commitment. Finally, an approach that uses a simplified interest calculation, such as simple interest for the entire loan term, is also incorrect. Mortgages in Dubai, as in most jurisdictions, utilize compound interest. Using simple interest would misrepresent the total interest paid and the overall cost of the financing, violating the ethical obligation to provide accurate financial information. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes accuracy and transparency in all financial dealings. This involves understanding and applying the correct financial formulas, cross-verifying calculations, and ensuring that all potential costs and repayment figures are clearly communicated to the client. When in doubt, consulting with a financial expert or referring to official mortgage calculators provided by reputable financial institutions in Dubai is advisable.